Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will reach a high of 81.3 degrees Fahrenheit with the low dipping to 60.9. It's shaping up to be a beautiful day to be outdoors, perhaps enjoying a walk or some fresh air. Later in the program, we'll explore the factors contributing to the accelerated pace of trade negotiations between the United States and the European Union. We'll also investigate why after-school programs are facing significant budget cuts and what that means for communities and families. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. We begin our coverage today with a significant development in global trade relations that's making headlines, a story that certainly has investors and consumers alike feeling the squeeze, then the relief. For more on the high-stakes negotiations between the United States and the European Union, let's go to our trade reporter, Ethan, who has been following every twist and turn. Ethan, good to have you. What's the latest on these escalating tariff tensions?
Grace, it's certainly been a roller coaster, but for now, the markets can breathe a sigh of relief, though perhaps only temporarily. President Donald Trump has announced a major delay in the implementation of a threatened 50% tariff on goods imported from the European Union. This very significant threat, which was initially due to take effect on June 1, 2025, just 5 days from today, has now been pushed back to July 9, 2025.
So a bit of a reprieve. What prompted this sudden shift after such a strong initial stance?
The delay came after a crucial phone call between President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. According to reports, the decision was made to provide both sides with additional time for what are expected to be very intensive trade negotiations. President Trump stated that it was his privilege to agree to the extension to July 9th. Ursula von der Leyen also expressed a strong desire for serious negotiations, underscoring that the U.S.-EU trade relationship is the world's most consequential and close trade relationship. She affirmed Europe's readiness to advance talks swiftly and decisively to reach a good deal by the new deadline.
That sounds promising, but what exactly was the initial threat that caused such a stir?
President Trump first issued this ultimatum via social media on Friday, May 23, 2025. He threatened a steep 50% tariff on EU goods, expressing frustrations over what he described as very difficult and stagnant trade negotiations with the EU. He asserted, quote, "The EU was formed for the primary purpose of taking advantage of the United States on trade," end quote. He detailed grievances including powerful trade barriers, VAT taxes, ridiculous corporate penalties, and even monetary manipulations. He claimed this resulted in a U.S. trade deficit, with the EU exceeding $250 billion annually, though according to U.S. Commerce Department data for 2024, the actual goods trade deficit was $235.6 billion.
Quite a strong statement. How was this initial threat received in Europe?
As you might imagine, not well, Grace. Before the delay was announced, the initial 50% tariff threat caused significant concern. Maros Sefcovic, the European Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, spoke out. He stated that EU-US trade must be guided by mutual respect, not threats. Sefcovic also emphasized that the EU was ready to defend its interests. European leaders and business leaders expressed disappointment and worry. Håkan Samuelsson, CEO of Volvo Cars, was among them. They were concerned about selling in the U.S. market and the impact on consumers. The threat had certainly caused stock markets to tumble.
So this delay has given them a chance to recalibrate. What are the key points of contention that will be on the table during these fast-track talks?
This is a crucial question. Reports suggest both sides now see a stronger reason for discussions. Paula Pinho, a spokesperson for the European Commission, confirmed this. She said both leaders agreed to speed up the trade talks. EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic reported positive conversations. These included calls with Trump administration officials. Among them were U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. The European Union's known negotiation position is clear. They offer zero tariffs on industrial products. This includes cars. The EU also seeks a deal that benefits both parties. This could mean the EU buys more U.S. soybeans. It might also increase purchases of U.S. weapons and liquefied natural gas.
And what about the U.S. side? What are their demands?
Washington's focus is reportedly on reducing its goods trade deficit with the EU and demanding steep concessions. They have previously indicated they would not lower tariffs below a 10% baseline. Key areas of friction include the existing steel and aluminum tariffs, the long-standing dispute over large civil aircraft subsidies involving Boeing and Airbus, and digital services taxes, or DSTs, which are unilateral EU member state taxes the U.S. views as unfairly targeting American technology companies. There are also agricultural trade barriers, like EU restrictions on U.S. genetically modified organisms, and the EU's new Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM, which is essentially a tax on imports based on their carbon emissions.
That's a lot to unpack. So what would substantial concessions look like from both sides to avoid these tariffs that would be implemented 43 days from today?
From the U.S. side, we would likely see a permanent resolution to the Section 232 steel and aluminum tariff issue, a commitment to multilateral solutions for digital taxation to avoid unilateral retaliatory tariffs, and constructive engagement on aligning approaches to carbon pricing under the CBAM. On the EU side, concessions would include addressing U.S. concerns about DST implementation, ensuring the CBAM is implemented in a WTO-compliant manner, and providing more transparent approval processes for U.S. agricultural products. Both sides are committed to achieving a deal by the July 9th deadline, which is now just 43 days away.
Ethan, that's a fantastic breakdown of a complex situation. It sounds like both sides are trying to iron out these differences and avoid a trade disaster. Thanks for keeping us up to date on these tariff-IC developments. We'll be back with story number 2 after the break.
My pleasure, Grace.
Welcome back. We turn now to a story that hits close to home for many families across the country. Reporter Chloe is here to shed some light on the potential impact of federal budget cuts on vital after-school programs. Chloe, tell us, what is the big picture here?
Grace, it is a significant concern. Today, May 27, 2025, the Trump administration's proposed federal budget cuts threaten after-school programs serving low-income students. These vital community resources primarily rely on federal funding, especially through the 21st Century Community Learning Centers Initiative, or 21st CCLC.
So not just general cuts, but a specific program. What exactly has the administration proposed, and why?
The President's fiscal year 2026 budget proposal calls for consolidating various education grants. Advocates fear 21st CCLC is on the chopping block, according to National Public Radio. The administration cites a perceived lack of evidence. OMB Director Mick Mulvaney claimed the program, quote, doesn't work, end quote. Secretary Linda McMahon told NPR they want to, quote, reorient taxpayer dollars toward proven programs, end quote.
Quote, doesn't work, end quote. What would the actual impact be if these cuts go through?
It is sobering, Grace. The cuts could affect an estimated 1.4 to 1.6 million children nationwide, predominantly low income, according to various advocacy groups. Proposals include outright elimination or consolidation into broader block grants with reduced funding. It is a bit of a shell game.
Do we have any local examples that truly highlight the impact?
Yes, in Maine. The REACH after-school program in the rural MSAD 54 school district starkly illustrates this. As reported by Jonaki Mehta for National Public Radio today, May 27, 2025, REACH offers enriching activities like a popular cooking club, robotics, and outdoor adventure. It sounds like a real reach for students to experience new things.
A cooking club sounds delicious. What specific benefits has REACH seen?
Director Don Fickett reported a 90% increase in homework completion and significant literacy improvements. The cooking club cleverly teaches math and science while providing meals, as NPR highlighted. It fosters social-emotional development, keeping kids, quote, off our streets and out of trouble, end quote. For parents, these free programs are an, quote, essential service, end quote, providing safe childcare. Rural districts like MSAD 54 are especially vulnerable. It is truly not a recipe for success if these programs are cut.
The administration's argument centers on these programs not being, quote, proven, end quote. What are they basing that on, and how are advocates countering it?
The administration primarily cites a 2003 Mathematica Policy Research, Inc. evaluation with results published in 2005. This early study concluded limited influence on academic performance. Conservative organizations frequently use this to label the program ineffective.
So they are relying on a 20-year-old study. What about more recent evidence?
Advocates argue relying on this outdated study is problematic. The U.S. Department of Education's own data from 2017 to 2018 stated the program, quote, touches students' lives in ways that will have far-reaching, positive impact, end quote. Half of participating students improved math and reading grades, and most showed improvements in homework and behavior. State-level evaluations also reportedly showed student improvement on state tests. A 2017 Government Accountability Office report suggested 21st CCLC was effective in improving behavioral outcomes.
It sounds like there is plenty of proof. Beyond academics, what are the broader consequences if these cuts were to go through?
The consequences extend beyond test scores. After-school programs provide a crucial, safe, supervised environment during peak juvenile crime hours. They offer essential resources like meals and snacks and foster social and emotional growth. For working families, they offer peace of mind. Cuts would disproportionately harm low-income families and communities of color. It is truly a multi-layered problem.
What is the next step in this process? What is Congress's role, and what are advocates doing?
Presidential budget proposals are recommendations to Congress, which ultimately controls federal appropriations. Historically, Congress has resisted some proposed eliminations. Advocacy groups like the After School Alliance are actively urging Congress to reject these cuts. Some state departments of education are proceeding with grant applications, with deadlines around May and July 2025. This ongoing uncertainty underscores deep disappointment, as Blue Ridge Public Radio noted, illustrating the profound impact these decisions could have.
Chloe, thank you for breaking down this very important story for us. It certainly sounds like a situation that will have a widespread impact if these proposed cuts are not stopped. We will certainly keep an eye on it. In France, lawmakers face a serious decision. The National Assembly will soon vote on a bill to legalize active assistance in dying. This life and death debate has been ongoing for years. The proposed law would let adults with a grave and incurable illness in an advanced or terminal stage ask for lethal medication. Strict rules apply. Patients must be over 18. They must be French citizens or residents. They must also be fully able to state their wishes. Both physical or psychological suffering must be intolerable and untreatable. However, an amendment clarified that psychological suffering alone is not enough. People with severe psychiatric conditions or neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's will not qualify. Patients would start the request. They would confirm it after thinking about it. A medical team would check if they are eligible. The lethal substance could be self-administered. If needed, a doctor, nurse, relative, or volunteer could help. National health insurance would cover the cost. Supporters prefer assisted dying instead of assisted suicide or euthanasia. The vote is expected late on Tuesday, May 27, 2025. This is only the first step. If it passes, the bill goes to the Senate. But the National Assembly has the final decision. This process could take a long time. A final vote might not happen until early 2026. President Macron supports this reform. He even suggested a referendum if the bill gets stuck. Discussions were cut short in June 2024 when Macron dissolved the assembly. But a similar draft reappeared in July. Leftist and centrist parties generally support the bill. Conservatives and the far right are mostly against it. However, members can vote as they choose. Prime Minister François Bayrou, a devout Catholic, suggested dividing the bill. He wants to separate assisted dying from measures to improve palliative care. Palliative care has broader support. A separate bill aims to strengthen palliative care. Macron promised an extra €1 billion over 10 years for this. There are also plans for new support homes. Public demand for end-of-life options is increasing. Polls show overwhelming support for these options. Currently, only passive euthanasia is legal. This potential change has faced strong opposition. Religious leaders and some health workers oppose it. They argue that the focus should only be on better palliative care. Reports show a disturbing pattern of death and brutality against Ukrainian prisoners of war held by Russia. Autopsies in Ukraine on returned bodies, along with testimonies, reveal a horrific situation. More than 200 Ukrainian POWs have reportedly died in Russian prisons. Ukrainian prosecutors are investigating the deaths of 268 POWs. Many died on the battlefield, and 59 died in the Olenivka penal colony. Autopsies often contradict Russian death certificates. For example, the Russian death certificate for soldier Serhiy Grigoriev cited a stroke, but a Ukrainian autopsy suggested violence and neglect. Causes of death include heart failure in young soldiers, tuberculosis, pneumonia, asphyxia, and blunt force head wounds. Medical examiners state these conditions would not be fatal with humane care. One report described electrocution and beatings. These led to death from heart failure and extreme emaciation. A UN report found that 95% of released Ukrainian POWs suffered systematic torture. This included severe beatings, electric shocks, suffocation, sexual violence, and mock executions. Officials believe differences in forensic findings and the state of returned bodies, sometimes with missing organs, suggest a Russian cover-up. The UN and human rights groups call this conduct war crimes. The death of journalist Victoria Roshchina is another tragic example. Her body reportedly showed torture marks and had organs removed. Russian authorities have not responded to these specific claims. They have previously accused Ukraine of mistreatment. However, the UN finds these Ukrainian claims far less common or severe. Ukraine is preparing war crimes charges for the International Criminal Court. Meanwhile, former President Trump is trying to change the narrative on fundraising. He is directing his attorney general to investigate online practices. He specifically targets Act Blue, the main platform for the Democrats. Trump claims concerns about foreign and fraudulent donations. However, an Associated Press review found that Trump's own campaign committees have received questionable donations. This has occurred over the past 5 years. The Associated Press identified 1,600 donations. These were from overseas donors, those with close foreign ties, or those who did not provide necessary identifying information. Examples include $5,000 linked to a derelict building. Another $5,000 came from a Chinese businessman listing a La Quinta Inn as his address. More than 1,000 contributions to Trump's campaign lacked key details. At least 90 came from anonymous donors, many processed through WinRed, the Republican equivalent of Act Blue. Act Blue acknowledged some potentially illicit foreign contributions but said it detects and rejects fraudulent donations. Their spokesperson quipped it's telling that Trump attacks grassroots platforms while his own campaign welcomes money from questionable sources. Critics call Trump's move politically motivated, while House Democrats are now asking the Treasury Department for evidence of suspicious transactions on Republican platforms. The Justice Department has 180 days to report back. In the automotive world, Sweden-based Volvo Cars is driving down costs, announcing plans to cut approximately 3,000 jobs as part of a major cost reduction program aiming to save nearly $1.9 billion USD. CEO Håkan Samuelsson described the current automotive climate as challenging, with Volvo seeing a 73% drop in net profit in the first quarter. Trade tensions, rising raw material costs, U.S. tariffs, and weaker demand for electric vehicles are all putting the brakes on performance. Around 1,200 job cuts will hit Sweden, with another 1,000 consultant positions, mostly in Sweden, also being eliminated. The rest will be global, mainly affecting office-based white-collar roles in areas like R&D and HR, representing about 15% of Volvo's office staff. And finally, a story of a family torn apart and reunited. A Minnesota couple learned their son, Abdelhamid, had joined ISIS. Years later, they discovered he had 2 young grandsons trapped in a Syrian desert camp. Abdelhamid was injured fighting for ISIS and separated from his sons in 2019 when he surrendered. The grandparents, who only knew of the boys through photos, were eventually able to bring their grandsons home after a complex years-long effort. As of last November, the boys were reportedly happy and healthy, living with their grandparents in Minnesota, a radical change of scenery from a Syrian camp. And that's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.